Kazvswild show. Today is February 13th, Thursday at noon, and this is the place to be. Welcome, everybody, and have a great day. I know I'm going to have a great day with today's show, and I just can't wait to get things started. One thing that I'm excited about is that this is my survival show. It's a brand new show. For those of you who haven't been here before, I want to welcome you and say thank you for coming. What we do here is we go over many different topics. We go over survival, obviously. We go over prepping. We go over homesteading, off-grid living, and things like that. So, the first thing I want to start out with is I want to talk about the snowstorm in the south. I mean, gosh, this is the second time I think this year that you guys have gotten blasted, and it's just kind of amazing to me that being here in Michigan, that you know we get several inches of snow at a time, and we just talk drive in the snow, and we talk about driving in the snow. But when you guys get an inch of snow down there, the whole town folds up. I just think that's kind of funny. I I don't understand how it is with one inch of snow can close up a whole entire town, a city, and things like that. I just kind of laugh at that. But up here, in early January, we got 12 inches of snow, and the town didn't fold up, and it's just kind of funny. I just kind of look at that and I just kind of laugh. But anyway, getting back to the show, I want to thank you guys for coming, and I hope you guys are having a great day. I'm having a great day. Today's show is going to be called The Learning Curve. Now, what is a learning curve? A learning curve is obviously a direction of learning. Okay, it's how some people learn. It's not how all people learn, but it's how some people learn. It's an idea of learning as you go. Okay, it's not something that you just kind of going to ace every test, and you're going to be the star student in the class. Okay, survival isn't really about that. I mean, there's no you know grade like an A or a B or a C or a D. Basically, when it comes to survival, the bottom line is that you're either going to pass or fail. There's really no in between when it comes to survival, and it's either pass or fail. But the classroom begins when things are easy. Like, for instance, right now, okay, there's no major disasters anywhere in the country. Now, what I mean by that is I'm not talking about the snowstorm. Okay, that's just a very temporary thing. We're going to get through that. Okay, but what I'm talking about is like a hurricane or tornado, a flood. Maybe the power's out for the whole week. Okay, when that is happening, that is not the time to learn survival. Okay. The time to learn survival is now. Now when it's easy. Now, now when it's not so hard to go out there and figure out, wow, you know what? Doing it this way just isn't going to work for me. Okay. You've got to go out there and you've got to practice what's called the learning curve. Now, the learning curve starts and involves every aspect of survival. Okay. It involves water purification. It involves putting your bug out bag together. It involves making fire when you're out in the forest. It involves, defensive modes when you're defending your property, or you're defending your person. And it also means that you also have to practice those medical situations that are going to come up when you're bugging out or when you're in that survival situation. So the learning curve can include a well-rounded flurry of ideas, a well-rounded situational process that you really need to learn. So how does this learning curve work? Okay. Well, there's two ways of learning, as we all basically know. I mean, there's really only two ways of learning. There's a passive way of learning, which is very informational. You're taking in information. Okay. You're gaining information. Whether you're at a laptop, whether you're reading a book, whether you're in a seminar or something like that, a very passive way of learning. Now, the other way of learning is called the active way of learning. Okay, the active way of learning, where you're involved in a discussion, but you're involved in that discussion on location. Okay, you're in the middle of the forest having a discussion. Okay, it might be doing a dramatic role play situation in the middle of the forest. It might be actually doing the real thing in a mock situation in the middle of the forest. So there's two different ways of learning in all of life. There's really only two different ways of learning stuff, and that is the passive way, and the other way is the active way. Now, whether you're going to college or you're going to school, okay, could you imagine? Okay, just picture this, okay? You just passed your all your doctor's courses, and now you're a doctor, but yet you've never touched a body. You've never taken out a pancreas, okay? You've never had hours in the operating room, but you've read 10 years worth of books, and you're going to operate on your very first person. What do you think's going to happen? Do you really think that pancreas is going to come out with ease? Do you really think that because you've studied for 10 years that oh man, this is going to be a snap because this is my first one and I've read all these books and I've read all this information. I've watched YouTube videos about how to remove a pancreas, and now I'm going to have my first operation. And I know I'm not going to run into any problems because I got all this knowledge, but you got zero experience. So the situation is that survival is the exact same way. How are you going to survive in a situation when you have your bug out bag that's fully packed? You have all the stuff that you need. You know, you have all the pots and pans and canned goods in your bug out bag, and you think you're going to throw that on your back and you're just going to head out to your bug out location. That's not going to happen. Did you ever try putting that bug out bag on your back with all those pots and pans and cans and everything else that's in that bug out bag? That bug out bag probably weighs about 100 pounds. You're going to get 50 feet down the street and you're going to go like, man, I need to get rid of some of this stuff. But you're not going to know what to get rid of because you never practiced. You didn't get out there and do it. So the learning curve consists of two different ways. You know, the the learning curve can be going to a lecture. Learning curve can be looking at pictures. Learning curve can be watching a movie, watching a video. The learning curve can be watching a demo or even seeing it done on location. But all of those that I just described are passive ways of learning. Okay, it's great that we can do that and go there and listen to those words and participate in that discussion. You know, the gentleman's lecture that he has for 2 hours, he could be demonstrating products, he could be demonstrating steel, he could be demonstrating how to purify water. But the the key to all of this is that passiveness is not going to save your life. Being passive about survival training is not going to help you when there's a situation and you need to enter that situation. Being passive about survival is only going to get you so far. Being passive means that you're not being active. Being passive means that you're not involved in the situation. You're not getting your hands dirty. You're not getting your hands wet. You're not you're just looking at the water purification system. You're kind of just looking at it, rubbing your chin, going, "Huh? How does that work?" Well, if you don't know how it works, it's not going to help you. It's not going to help you at all if you're not out there doing it actively. So, is it important to train passively? Absolutely. I'm not saying that passiveness can be avoided. It's not what I'm saying. You have to train passively and actively. You have to train both ways. By training both ways, you actually get a well-rounded idea of what to expect when you're out in that situation. Now, is it going to be the exact situation? No, because there's going to be hidden pitfalls along the way every step of the trail. The mindset that you should have is that if there's a chance that it's going to go wrong, it probably is going to go wrong. The biggest tool in your bug out bag. What is the biggest tool or the most important tool in your bug out bag? Because when I ask people this, most people tend to say, "Well, I I think it's my flint and steel. Well, I think it's my water purification system. Well, I think it's this. I think my biggest tool is that. I get a whole list of items. What's the most important tool? By far, the most important tool is your brain. Using your brain is the most important tool because you might be in that situation without your bug out bag. So learning passively is just as important as learning actively, but you have to learn both ways. Passiveness creates knowledge. Knowledge is very, very important. Going back to the scenario of the doctor taking out the pancreas, if he doesn't study for those 10 years, there's no way he's going to operate on anybody. Okay. But without that active knowledge, that first surgery he's going to have, I'm going to bet that that patient's going to die because I guarantee you something's going to go wrong. So with passive knowledge, I'm not saying that passiveness isn't important. It is just as important as active knowledge. So the idea of passiveness, okay, lectures, looking at pictures, watching movies, watching YouTube videos, watching a demonstration at maybe a shot show or your local gun and knife show, and then seeing it done, but you're not participating in it. These are huge things that you're going to need to teach yourself how to do things passively. But on the flip side of that coin, you're also going to need to learn how to do it actively. Now, the one thing about passiveness, the one benefit to passiveness is that when you gain that knowledge, it is a temporary knowledge because as humans, we tend to forget as time goes on. Okay. We we might learn something today and then in 6 months from now we'll be like, how did he do that? Did he use his right hand or left hand or two sticks or gosh, I don't remember. It just, oh man, how do they do that? The problem with passiveness is that it's like a temporary file on your computer, right? You always have to refresh. You always have to go back with passiveness because passiveness is a temporary thought. It's a temporary image in your mind. It's a temporary thing, a temporary way of doing things because it's just that. It's passive. It's just a thought. It's just an image. It's just an idea. It's the way that you saw somebody else doing something. Passive training is absolutely important. But if you just stop at passive training, you're not going to make it out there when something goes wrong in a survival situation. You're not going to make it out there in that situation that you're unprepared for. Now, there's no guarantee that, take myself, Kaz, okay, who has his 5th season of kazvswild coming up. There's no guarantee that when something happens, I'm not going to get killed in the first 5 or 10 minutes of whatever it is that's going on. If I were to bet my luck on it, I would put my money on that anyway. But my point is that you need to train both ways. You need to train passively because that is so very important to gain the knowledge. There is no other greatness in your bug out bag than knowledge. And again, that goes back to your number one tool in your bug out bag, and that would be your brain. Because without your brain, none of those tools mean anything because they're not going to work on their own. They're not going to work and make the fire for you. They're not going to purify the water for you. They're not going to cook your food for you. Your brain does that. Your hands do that. Everything that it revolves around the actual survival part of surviving is the activeness. So we talk about passive training. It is extremely important, and it is just as important as the active training. So when we come back from the break, I see we're going on break here in just a couple minutes. Come back from the break. I'm going to do a segment on active training and just what active training entails. Because active training is where rubber meets the road. Active training is where you really find out what's going on, who knows how to do it, and what is going to happen when rubber meets the road. And welcome back from the break, guys. I really appreciate that. You know, it takes me a minute to wet my whistle there, and you know, with all the talking on this end, it's just I love doing the show. I love the fact that you guys are here, and I really want to say that next week I'm having a guest host, and that's going to be Fixed by Doc, who lives in Pennsylvania. So my good friend Fixed by Doc, who I have met in person a couple times, but I've had lunch with him a couple times. He's a fantastic person. So next week I'm looking forward to having Fixed by Doc as my guest host, and I'm really excited about that. And with having a guest host, we're going to have a bit of a longer show next week. So I'm looking to have maybe an hour and a half to a 2-hour show next week if Fixed by Doc does indeed show up. So I'm really looking forward to having Fixed by Doc here with us next week. But if you want to be a guest host on the kazvswild show, you're more than welcome to do that. You can email me here at disasterfeeling.net, or you can Find me on any one of my YouTube channels, including my kazvswild YouTube channel. Obviously, that's what this is about, the kazvswild radio show. So if you want to be a guest host on my show, feel free. Don't be shy. Step right up. Send me a private message, and I will get back with you as soon as I can. But let's continue on with the show here, and let's keep on moving forward. The first part of the show, we talked about the learning curve and the importance of passive knowledge. And like I said, I don't want to understate the fact of passive knowledge because we have to have the knowledge in order to put it into action. So action means active knowledge. So with the learning curve, we have the passive and active system. Now the active system is where the rubber meets the road, like I said right before the break. So what is active? Active means participating in a discussion with other people that you're in the forest. Okay. You're actually in the forest having the discussion. Okay. You're not at a seminar. You're not at the gun show. You're not at the shot show. You're actually there in the forest having the discussion. Okay. Leading the discussion. Talking about the discussion like I'm doing now. In order to do that, you have to have the knowledge and the experience and the know-how to lead a discussion, to be confident enough to say, hey, you know what? I've done this over 100 times. I've done this over 5,000 times. I know I can talk about this subject matter because I've experienced this while doing just this one particular thing. And you know what? When people throw questions at me, I know I can answer them. So leading a discussion, that's another way of being active. Okay. Doing a role playing situation, doing an, an active acting job on the situation. Now that, what I mean by that is that would be a medical thing. Okay. Obviously building a fire, you wouldn't be acting like you're building a fire. You would really build the fire. Okay. When you're doing a dramatization, we're really talking about the medical aspect of it. Okay. How to wrap a splint, how to make a splint. Someone breaks their leg in the middle of the forest. How are you going to get them back to camp or this, that, or the other? Are you going to make a makeshift cot or a makeshift gurney so you can get this person back to camp? Okay. That would be a active learning situation when you're out there in the forest practicing survival. A real time simulation. This is huge. This is huge when it comes to active training. A real time simulation. Do your own real time simulation. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is throw your bug out bag on your back. Take your long gun with you, whether it's going to be a shotgun or a rifle, and get your group together. 4, 5, 10, whatever. Go to some state land and hike across it. Do an actual simulation. Set up targets on that state land where you're going to shoot at those targets. Okay. Do an actual simulation. I mean, let's face it, DHS and the Army and the Armed Forces, they do simulations all the time. Why can't you do a simulation? And then finally, the last part of active training is doing the real thing. Doing the real thing, getting out there and doing every aspect of survival in the here and now as we speak in the forest. And again, that's what we do at kazvswild. We do it in the forest. We do it right on location. We do the real thing. So going back to the beginning again, talking about active, participating in a discussion like I'm doing now. Okay. I'm the one giving the discussion. I am being active in teaching you folks who are listening, who are currently receiving the information passively. But I'm being the active one. If you become the active one, what does that do for you? Well, the first thing that it does is number one, it increases your confidence. Okay. The second and most important thing that it does is that it keeps that knowledge in your brain fresh. Because like I said, passively, if you're not refreshing that knowledge, you're going to forget it. But if you can refresh it actively while you're doing it, then when you need that knowledge, it just comes second nature. Okay. You don't have to think about how this flint and steel works. You don't have to think about how this purification system works because you've done it so many times that it just comes naturally now. That is what is important about being in a discussion because you remember as you're discussing it, you're going to reflect on your passive information and say, oh yeah, when I was up in Montana, yeah, that's exactly how I did it. Yep. So when you're in a discussion, you're going to reflect in memory how it is that you did it while you're teaching people who are accepting the information in a passive way. So therefore, leading in that discussion is an active learning curve for you. Now, by leading that discussion, strengthens that memory. It builds that memory, and that is so huge. Now, doing a dramatic skit, that is also important. Okay, you see a lot of times at the SHOT Show or a lot of times at your local gun and knife show, you'll see all kinds of demonstrations going on. Okay, I can guarantee you that that person who's doing the demonstration has done that thing probably over 100 times by himself or with his friends somewhere in the forest or whether he's at military training or whatever. And now that he's at the gun show or the SHOT Show and he's showing other people how to do it, I can guarantee you that that person could probably do it with their eyes closed. Okay. So when you're leading a dramatic skit or you're doing something like that, okay, again, you're reaffirming your knowledge that you learned passively because you're doing it second nature. But it's important to actually go out and role play that situation. It's important because the reason you role play is because what you're trying to do is you're trying to discover a new way that something can go wrong. That's the importance of role playing. That's the key to role playing. You know, I've done this 10 times and it's weird. Every 10, 10 times I've had a different problem. Well, now I'm doing it an 11th time and, I have yet to repeat the same problem twice. That is the key to role playing. You're trying to eliminate problems you're going to experience when you really need it. You're trying to eliminate the issues. You're trying to eliminate the mistakes. You're trying to limit the amount of time that you need to do whatever project you're doing. And by doing this, by being active about it, get faster and better and more accurate. And when you do it in front of other people, you look confident doing it. You look confident giving that passive training to the people who are watching. And then they look at you and go, wow, Kaz knows what he's really doing. That's what it's all about. It's about being out there and being active. It's about being active and learning and understanding what is going to happen, what situation is coming, what problems you're going to experience. Because in the real thing, if you practice this in simulation form 100 times and you've come up with 100 different ways of it going wrong, and then the real life experience happens, And it just so happens that in your experience, what's happening now actually happened before. You can reflect on that and say, oh man, when I was at that gun and knife show, this happened to me before. And the fix was to do it like this. Because in that pinch, in that situation, you are going to need to know how to be Johnny on the spot, how to fix that situation, how to wrap that arm, how to splint that leg, how to build that fire, how to purify that water. And by all your active training, that is what's going to save you time. And time is just might be what's going to save your life. Because let's face it, if it's going to take you 3 hours to purify water as opposed to 5 minutes, that is a huge window of error that you really can't have. Okay? So by being out there and doing it active, it exposes all the things that can go wrong. And when you expose the things that can go wrong, then you can gain that knowledge and say, yep, I know what to expect. So simulations and doing a dramatic skit or a dramatic role play is huge when it comes to survival. Now, the last thing about active training is doing the real thing. Do it live. We're going to do it live. That's right. We're going to do it live. Doing it live is probably the last step out of everything that I've mentioned right now. Before you can do it live, you have to do it passively. And before you do it live, you're probably going to practice a little bit in your living room or maybe in your backyard, or you might practice at a friend's house, when you have the opportunity to practice. But there has to come a day, if you're going to be fully prepared for the situation at hand, where you do it live. You literally go out into the middle of the forest where you don't have running water, where you don't have running electricity, where you don't have running gas, okay? Where you don't have the help of, things that are in the kitchen that are just 100 feet away. Put yourself in that situation and do it live. Try to build that fire with that flint and steel. Try to purify that water. Try to get that fire built in less than 10 minutes. Make those Vaseline cotton balls in your kitchen, then take them out to the forest and get that fire going. Get that fire started. Doing it live also means, hey, you might want to do some weapons training too. You might want to set up some targets while you're out there in the middle of nowhere. You might want to practice your aim. You might want to practice your target. Do it live. Get out there and actually do it. Because the passive information that you have is only temporary. Unless you refresh those files, that information is just going to disappear. The best way to refresh those files is to actually get out there and do it. That is absolutely the best way. Now, I see we're getting ready to go to break. And when I get back from break, we're going to finish up the last segment of our show. And I hope everyone's having a great time. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I'll be right back. And welcome back from the break, everybody. Thanks for staying with us and having a great time out here today. I know I love doing a radio show, and I love doing kazvswild. I really love getting out there and just being out in the woods, being one with nature, and hanging out with my friends, and it's just really cool just being out there in the forest in the middle of nowhere. Just you just kind of get away from everything for a while. no running water, no running electricity, no running gas. Just doing everything with nature. And like I said, this year's kazvswild is going to be September 21st to the 27th here in Michigan, in Frankfort, Michigan. And I always invite all my subscribers, subscriptions, and friends to come. So all of you are invited to come to this year's kazvswild. Again, that is September 21st to the 27th. Now, winding up today's show, we are going to talk about the learning curve, in which we have done a lot of discussion on the learning curve already today. We've talked about the importance of passive information. We've talked about the importance of active information. And we've talked about how both of those actually coincide with each other. Before we do anything in life, the first thing we do is we learn it passively, and then we learn it actively. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing. I mean, every aspect of life, that's how we learn. It's called the learning curve. First we learn it, then we do it. It's that simple. But what is the failure rate of the learning curve? I often get asked a lot of questions. Well, Kaz, what if the situation is this and something else is going on, and then you got 20 people that are chasing you down, and it's middle of night, and how do you do that? How do you respond to that? Right? That's the question that they ask me. My response to that is I've already experienced that. And how I've already experienced that is by going out into the forest and getting it done. Because the part that people miss is that when you actively do something for the first time, it's going to take some time to get that figured out. Okay. But when you do that thing for the 20th time or the 50th time, you've got all the bugs worked out. Okay. So when you're in a situation where the crap has hit the fan, okay, and you, you're involved and you got all this panic and this and that, you've already done this 100 times. You've already done it. You've already figured out what the problems are going to be. You already know what the pitfalls are going to be. So you're already expecting those pitfalls. Even though Murphy's Law is going to play a huge role at that moment, the confidence that you're going to have by training actively is going to show and going to come out in that situation when the pressure is on. So when people ask me that question all the time, Kaz, this is the situation. You got 20 people coming in, this, that, and the other. What are you going to do? The answer is, I've already done that. I've already experienced that because I go out to the forest and I train in the forest and I refresh my passive knowledge and I refresh my active knowledge. And by hitting the refresh button, that information is always right there in front of me. It's like reading a book that's hooked onto my forehead that's 10 inches in front of me. So while I'm doing it, I can look up and read the manual and go back to doing what I'm doing. That's how fresh the information in my head is. But what is the failure rate? What at, at what point in time does the failure rate affect your survival? Okay? Because there's going to be a failure rate. In everything we do, you can take the world's best doctor, the world's best surgeon, I should say. Even that surgeon has a bad day, unfortunately. Unfortunately. So there is a failure rate with everything that we do in life. Now, the failure rate can be reduced. And how it can be reduced is by training actively, by getting out there and actually doing it. But the failure rate is 100% if all you do is train passively. There's no way you're going to survive. There's no way you are going to survive a situation if all you do is train passively. And I stress that all the time. I stress being active. I stress getting out into the forest and getting it done. Because if you don't go out into the forest and if you don't practice in the forest, your failure rate is going to be at 90% or greater. It is going to be at 90% or greater if all you do is practice passive training. Passive training is the start. Active training is the finish. If you want to do something from start to finish, you have to do both. There's no shortcuts in survival. There's not. It's just like being that surgeon. Okay. You can't have 6 months of college at a community college and then go right into the ER because, well, you know what? The middle of 9.5 years, I don't really think I want to wait that long. You know what? I'm going to learn how to do sutures and then I'm going to take the pancreas out. I'm just going to skip everything in between. Well, it doesn't work that way. And neither does survival. You can read books all day. You could watch videos all day. You can listen to people talk to you all day. And that's great. That knowledge is huge. That knowledge ties into the active training, the active learning, and that passive and activeness is going to reduce that failure rate. Now, like I said, when you're in a situation, there's no guarantee that you're going to get killed or you're going to get injured in the first 5 or 10 minutes. Like I said, with me, Murphy's Law, that's going to be me. I mean, I'm going to take 2 steps out the door and slip on a piece of ice and crack my head open. And then my family's like, well, gee, Dad, now what? You know, so you got to plan for that. Okay. You have to plan for things like that. But doing it active, like I said, it exposes all the pitfalls as to what can happen. And here is the beauty of that. When you're doing it out there and you're practicing, there's no pressure. Doing it now, there's no pressure. Doing it in a non-survival situation, you can actually understand the pitfalls of what goes wrong. You can understand the challenges that you're going to face. But if you don't practice those things and you don't understand the pitfalls that are going to go wrong when the pressure is on, when you've got 20 people breathing down your neck who want to fire because they're all hungry and we ain't got no water to drink, but you've never practiced it, you're setting yourself up for failure. And for those who don't practice, for those who don't actively practice, there's a 90% failure rate if all you're doing is passive training. There is a game that I love. I haven't played it, but I've researched it. I'm going to drop it in the chat. I want everybody to check this out. This is a game, a survival game that you can play. It's called Conflicted the Game. Conflicted is a card game that you play with, you know, in a group of people. And what it is, it's a scenario of things that go wrong. It's a scenario of things that go wrong and how you're going to get through this situation. It is from what I've read, like I said, I haven't actually played it, but I want to play it. From what I've read, it's a awesome game to drive your thought process. It's an awesome game to actually get out there and in the comfort of your home with your family. This would be an excellent opportunity to help teach your family members, teach your wife, teach your kids, explain different situations that can come up. Conflicted, it's a card game. I mean, not only can you survival train in your living room, but you're also playing a game in a sense. I am going to order a set of these cards, and I am going to look at them, and I am really going to check this out. But from the feedback that I've received, this conflicted game is really helpful when doing your training and thinking about situations that you may not have thought about. So with the learning curve, obviously you've been here for the whole show. You can understand that the learning curve is a huge deal. The learning curve begins with books and lectures and videos and goes all the way through to you doing it yourself out in the forest. And what it does is it reduces that failure rate. What it does is that it increases the odds and increases the chance that something, when it goes wrong, you're going to have the answer for it. When that situation happens, you're going to look back on your passive information and say, yep, I had this happen a long time ago, and in my active training, this was the solution, and this is where I'm at. Absolutely. And what that's going to do is that's going to build confidence in the group. That's going to build confidence in you. That's going to show to others that, wow, Freedom for Kaz has taken the time to research this, but not only research it, actually get out there and do it. And like I said, talking about this conflicted card game, this is something that's going to drive your thought process. This is something that's going to drive your idea as to, hey, what haven't I thought about perhaps that might happen? And here's an excellent opportunity to get the family together, sit down at the family table, and just play a game of cards called Conflicted the Game, and just kind of throw some scenarios out there when it's family time. I mean, this is what it's all about. I mean, survival isn't about the individual. I mean, survival at this point is about family. It's about family and doing what's right. Getting yourself prepared, getting yourself in order, and also, like I said, the learning curve, learning passively and learning actively. Well, we're coming to the end of today's show, and man, it was a fast hour, as it always is. But I just want to throw out there my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know where I'm at, I'm going to drop my channel in the chat here. For those of you who want to find me, you can find me on YouTube, my kazvswild channel. You can find me here at disasterfeeling.net. And I want to thank you for coming to today's show, and I want to thank you for joining in the chat. And I want to thank JD for being an awesome producer. I really appreciate the help. And I want to thank all of my friends here at disasterfeeling.net. Doolin, F-Town, Mike, Hook, Facto Matt, all you guys, thank you for showing up. And for those of you who didn't log into the chat, I want to thank you guys for showing up as well. You can find me at kazvswild there. You can also find me at my other YouTube channels, which are all linked together. Just go to the About channel, the About page on my YouTube channel. You'll find them all there. And one last thing is next week's show, I do planning on having my first guest host, and that's going to be Fixed by Doc, who lives in Pennsylvania. So with that, I'm going to end today's show, and I hope you guys have a great day. I know I'm going to have a great day. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place.